How you doing? I wanted to do a little video on, you bought a go-kart and it doesn't run, and what do you do? We've been through this many, many times here, racing all last year, and these go-karts, these 150cc GY6 go-karts are pretty darn reliable, but they're Chinese and they have some very Chinese issues, and I just kind of wanted to go over some steps to hopefully help get you running as quickly as possible and as least expensively as possible. Generally, when you buy one, we can go right over here to Facebook, and you're looking through the go-kart section. You find a go-kart that you like. You stumble on this one here that I had found earlier. This is a Candy Batman. They say 200cc, but it's already it's 172 cc's. Anyways, you look through the pictures, it looks nice. One thing to look, it all looks unmolested. It's pretty stock in the back. $1,700. It should get in it and run, have a good battery, no problems. You buy this, you're good to go. Something like this, on the other hand, this is a carbide. One of our guys has one of these go-karts. What does he say? Needs magneto. Will do 45, 50 miles an hour. Doesn't come with light stock. Blah, blah, blah. $800. Probably a little steep, but that's what people tend to ask for. I guarantee it. There's at least two tires that don't hold air on this thing. The air box has gone missing. Probably hasn't ran in a long time, and this would be a good candidate for what we're talking about. If you look at this, the rear tires have been replaced with some sort of lawnmower tires. Front tires are bald. This thing's been used a lot. It says it needs a magneto. Maybe, maybe not. Magnetos themselves are fairly inexpensive. If you're going to go through that, determining the magneto, buy the entire kit. Just buy the kit that comes with everything. It'll come with a new magneto, a new CDI, a new voltage regulator, and they're like $40 on Amazon or whatever. We can look at that. But anyways, that's what we're kind of looking at. You get a go-kart and it doesn't run. What do you do? What are the first steps? Well, the first thing, you have to get it to turn over and see if it has spark. Generally, like that magneto issue, it's either not charging or it doesn't have spark. Most likely, it doesn't have spark. We run into that all the time, and there's a common problem with it, and it has to do with these CDI boxes. The CDI boxes come in two versions. Let me add this up here. There's an AC version and a DC version. There's two ways to know which one you're dealing with. Number one, the AC one is almost always smaller than the DC one. The other thing you can do, let me see if I have it up here. Oh yeah, I gotta do, sorry, this is all new to me. The AC one doesn't need any power from anything. You don't need a battery for it to have spark or anything. It just run, the motor will run without a battery. If you have a DC one, you need a good battery or it won't have any spark. This pin here on the AC one is your ignition kill, which means when the motor is running, you ground this pin and the motor shuts off. This pin on the DC one is the motor kill, but you turn the key on, it gets 12-volt power here. You turn the key off, it shuts off power, motor shuts off. Pretty simple. And I actually have a wiring diagram, but how do I share this page? I'm new to this. Share screen. We'll share any of them. And we'll get to my little thingy. There. This is just a random diagram I found. I think this is from NCY, which is a pretty good parts store to get stuff from. And it has the pinouts of the CDI. But the first thing you want to do, assuming that you have a AC CDI, is you want to eliminate the ignition It's another diagram. You know, if you buy a go-kart and it doesn't have any spark and everything, the wiring and whatnot all looks kind of intact, find your CDI box and disconnect this wire and then see if you still have spark. Because a lot of times what happens is these go-karts are plagued with wiring issues. And by removing this wire on an AC CDI, it will not work on a DC CDI. You remove this wire, you take the ignition switch and the wiring from the go-kart itself out of the system, and then you can see if you have spark or not. If you disconnect this and you have a spark, your issue is in your wiring on your go-kart, or probably most likely the ignition switch itself. The other thing is, if you have a DC CDI, turn on your ignition and make sure that there is 12 volts to this wire, which is on this. You have to make sure that you're have, where is it, number 3? Anyways, you have to make sure that you have DC voltage to the CDI. Let my screen go. But anyways, that's the thing. And we're going to spend a minute or two here talking about these CDIs, because they will betray you. They're going to cause you problems. They are a disaster. Specifically the AC ones. The Candy go-kart, one of our guys here has one, and that was a DC CDI on his go-kart. And the same issues are both. So you don't have spark. The first thing you want to do is you want to get a replacement CDI box. And generally what happens is you go to, let me get my screen up here, Amazon, sorry. I'll get better at this. Let me just share this. Get to Amazon, put in GY6 CDI. You see all of these. You see racing ones, you see orange ones, you see blue ones, you see rev limiting and all this. Don't buy a fucking CDI off of Amazon. It will betray you. They are garbage. You will get CDIs that don't work. You get CDIs that you think work and they really don't work. These blue ones are absolutely trash. They're more trash than the orange ones, and the orange ones are complete trash. I actually cut one of these orange ones open, and it was full of white silica sand that just bounces around, and it'll betray you, and don't buy it. The other thing about these orange ones, and a lot of these, is they all say racing, no rev limit, blah, blah, blah. You know, just ignore that bullshit. I have a tachometer on my go-kart, and I've been a half mile down the road wide open, and I don't think I ever hit above 85, 8800 RPMs. Never hit a rev limiter. Your valves will be floating at 8500 RPMs. This no rev limit bullshit does not apply to our go-karts at all. There's tons of videos on this. The other thing is, you know, generally you have your black stock style CDI box, and then you have these racing CDI boxes. Some of them, there's a huge, I'm going to do another video on performance parts, but for right now, what you need to know is don't buy any of the performance shit. And I have where's my picture? Here it is. All right, I drew this up quickly because there's a guy on YouTube that went through with a oscilloscope and mapped out all the different ignition curves of these different CDI boxes, from the orange ones to the stock ones, and it was really interesting, because like your typical orange performance CDI and your blue one end up advancing the ignition. So I kind of have my thing drawn wrong, but let's say this top line is the performance one, and this bottom line is the stock black CDI. What happens with the performance ones is they start out with a high ignition advance, and they kind of maintain that same advancement through, and it ends up being a slightly more advanced ignition, which will give you more power than a stock curve. But the interesting thing is the black stock CDI boxes retard the ignition from idle to a little above idle before they advance it, and that makes your machine start better, run better. You know, it'll save your starter, and it's way better. That and the performance gain on a few degrees of advancement is not even worth it. There are performance CDIs worth buying, and I'm going to do another video on performance stuff. For now, what you need to know is don't buy that garbage. Let's see. Okay, back to my Amazon bullshit. Anyways, so don't even buy one off of Amazon. It's just not even worth it. They're garbage. They're going to betray you. It used to be, you know, back in the day with dirt bikes and stuff, if your dirt bike or your snowmobile didn't have spark and you tried a different CDI on it, then it had spark, your CDI was bad. You would buy a new one and you'd carry on with your day. CDIs back in my time generally they either worked or they didn't, meaning you had spark and your CDI was good, or you didn't have spark, your CDI was bad. There was no gray area, no nothing. Well, we don't live in that world anymore. We live in China world. This China bullshit is a nightmare. I have had several CDIs where you take your spark plug out and you have an issue with your go-kart. It's running like shit. Sometimes they don't start at all. You take your spark plug out, you check spark. It's got spark, put it back in, it won't start. You change carburetors, you change fuel, you change everything else because you assume you have spark. Well, these freaking orange CDI boxes, these orange heap of garbage, everything on here on Amazon, that I don't care which one you buy from Amazon, they're all garbage on Amazon. They screw up the spark. They've sparked too fast. They cut the spark off too soon. And simply by, it took us a long time to figure this out. We had a couple nightmare go-karts where we just couldn't figure it out. And I ended up buying a CDI box from a different vendor. And it was a bit more expensive, and it cured the problem. And I was like, holy shit, these Amazon CDI boxes are completely junk. And it was eye-opening because now what I thought my entire life that a CDI box either sparked or it didn't is not true. That's not how this China stuff works. So if you need a CDI box, I usually try to keep a couple of the stock ones here that are good from a different vendor. But there's you know, there's a lot of good vendors outside of Amazon. JD's Custom Buggies, he does high performance GY6 stuff. Solid guy, great parts. However, he moved to Tennessee and he's not shipping anything right now. Go Power Sports, they sell quality products. Their customer service is really great. Buggy Depot, they sell a lot of great stuff, good parts. They have wiring harnesses and stuff if you don't want to mess around with that. They're a little expensive in my opinion, but they can get you a wiring harness for whatever go-kart you have or anything like that. There's a lot of good how-to articles and troubleshooting and stuff on this website. Really, really good website. NCY is a good store. Their parts are generally really good. I mean, if you're going to buy, you know, don't spend $64 on an orange performance CDI box. Like I said, you're not going to gain anything. That being said, CDI boxes from the NCY store, it's going to work and it's not going to betray you. Generally, their parts are made in Taiwan, not China, and they're good parts. But at $64, you're nearing you might as well just buy a good Banjung performance one. But right now we're not worried about that. We're just trying to get your go-kart working and that sort of thing. So now you know a little bit more about CDI boxes, and you don't have to go through the heartache and the expense that I did. But the orange ones, Amazon ones, they're going to betray you. Don't buy from there. Don't buy a performance one. Buy a black stock replacement one from a reputable scooter store or go-kart store. And you need to know if you have a DC or an AC. Almost all of them are AC, but a few manufacturers do use DC. And when you get into performance stuff, you're going to be into DC. Next would be your fuel system. A lot of these go-karts have been sitting around, and I'm going to find, yeah, this is a bit new to me. Share screen, Amazon. Sure. All right. On your gas tank, on almost all of these gas tanks, they have a vacuum operated petcock on the gas tank. And what you have is this little nipple right here that needs a vacuum pulse to turn it on for fuel to flow. These go bad. They go bad frequently. It's not one of those where you need to replace it, right away and assume it's bad. It's something that to look at if you can't figure out anything else. Now that line connects up to this nipple on your intake manifold. So you have your carburetor goes here. This little nipple is right here. It usually goes up into a T on the carburetor, and then the other remaining line that they tuck down in here on this brand new carburetor goes up to that valve. But it's just one thing to look out for. I've gotten away from these valves altogether, and I've sourced out and figured out how to just put an on-off valve on it, and I don't run the vacuum and carry on, and life is good. The other thing that you can run into is your starter solenoid problem. So if you got your go-kart and you got a good battery in it and you hit the key and nothing happens, these starter solenoids go bad all the time. They're inexpensive. You might as well just buy one just to have in your toolbox because they go bad. But a quick test is to just run a screwdriver across these two terminals, and assuming you have a good battery and you have power, because your power goes from the battery, the positive post, to one of these posts on the starter solenoid, and then throughout the rest of the go-kart. Sometimes there's a fuse box in between. But anyways, if you're just trying to get your go-kart that hasn't ran in years running, you can run a screwdriver across these and it should turn over. If you have power and you put a screwdriver across it and it clicks or makes a thumping noise or doesn't turn over, you either have a dead battery or you may need a new starter. But anyways, that's a quick test to see, if your solenoid is bad or not. Sometimes they click and then you just replace them. But if you know you got power here when you hit the key on one of these leads and nothing happens, but you put a screwdriver or a wrench across these two and it turns over, you have a bad solenoid. Okay, then now the carburetors. This is your typical GY6 carburetor. This one's brand new. You get your go-kart, if it's been sitting for a long time, and the 87 octane, your ethanol, all that crap, just ruins these carburetors. Then my advice would be just to take it off and throw it in the trash and buy a new one and put it on. And when you do that, buy a new intake manifold. This is a stock replacement intake manifold. They're black rubber. They crack, they leak air, they cause you all sorts of problems. So if you're replacing the carburetor, spend the $6 or $8, whatever it is, and replace this too. The performance ones are aluminum, and they're decent too. So if you wanted to spend a little more and get the performance one instead of the cheap black one, that's fine. And then you can later port it out and do work to it or whatever. And these last way, way longer than the stock black ones. But back to the The carburetors, they run around $30 somewhere in there. But if you're having problems, you got fresh gas in it, it's turning over, you got spark, it won't start, replace your carburetor. Just buy a new one and be done. You can try to clean it, but a lot of the times on these go-karts, you can't even get the screws out. They have special screws that need to be drilled. Don't even fuck around with it. Just throw it in the trash and buy a new one, put it on, and carry on with your day. The other thing is, if your go-kart starts and runs and it's running like shit, make sure you have an air cleaner on it. These go-karts will not run right without an air cleaner. If you don't have an air cleaner on it, they're just not gonna run good. Don't try to buy a performance carburetor or anything. I'll do a video on performance stuff. You know, you see the fancy carburetors and big carburetors and this and that, and a lot of them are really inexpensive. You'll have a bad day if your go-kart's not running and you try to put one of those on to get it running, because the jetting is never right. Just buy a stock replacement, put it on, carry on, life is good, your go-kart runs. Now, these do have issues, but they work good. I mean, most of our guys still have a stock carburetor, and they work good. There's a lot of debate on the internet as to what this black thing is with the wires. It's called an enricher. It functions, as we know, like a choke. An actual choke, like on your lawnmower, is a valve in front of the carburetor. You pull the choke, it cuts off air, and then the motor is choked. When it's cold, then it starts. An enricher, when the enricher is engaged, it opens up the fuel circuit, adds more fuel when it's cold, starts up, runs, and goes. I don't know why that's so confusing, because, I mean, I call it a choke too, but even on a carburetor, like on your dirt bikes and stuff, your snowmobiles, we all call this a choke. It's actually an enricher. I will continue to call it a choke. You get into scooter and go-kart world and GY6 stuff, and people insist you call this an enricher. And technically that's correct. I'm still going to call it a choke. Anyways, the way these work is you start up your buggy. The one end gets 12-volt power. The other end goes to a resistor, to a ground. It slowly heats up and it turns off the enriching valve, and you carry on in your day. If you get your go-kart running and your wiring is intact, good luck. I mean, that's awesome. I've never seen that, but I hear it's awesome. If your go-kart's not running and you're just trying to get running and going, don't even worry about this. These go-karts will start and run okay without this wire even plugged in. Don't even worry about it. Just get your machine running, and then you can come back to this if you decide you want to, and you're going to start doing some upgrades or has some performance problems. But yeah, generally just take your carburetor off and you throw it in the fucking trash, and you buy a new one and you put it on, and then your life is good. Now, I'm trying to cover everything for you guys, so I'm just going to look through my pages here to see. Anyways, I had notes written a week or two ago, and I was too lazy to look them up and find them. But I hope you learned something from that. The big thing is the CDIs. Don't buy them from Amazon. Don't buy the stupid performance ones. And if you see that orange one, you know, treat it like an ex-wife. It's going to hurt you. Just leave it alone. The next video I'm going to do is I'm going to go through basic performance parts, you know, such as your high performance carburetors, what to look for, what to expect, how to get them running, performance exhaust, performance intakes. I think I might leave clutching for a separate video, just because I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But do me a favor, please hit the like and the subscribe. I mean, I know. Thanks, and you know, go-kart season's coming fast, and I hope to see a bunch of you out here.